The boardroom went silent when I walked in. Power suit, diamonds at my throat. Every chair turned. Mrs. Kang's face filled the video screen from her hospital bed, and I watched her mouth open, then close, then open again with nothing coming out. The woman who called me the help? The woman who slid $200,000 across a table and told me to disappear. She was looking at the person who controlled whether her hospitals had medicine tomorrow. Good morning. I'm Naomi Carter, sole heir to Carter Pharmaceuticals. Silence so thick you could cut it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a girl from Savannah, Georgia, ended up standing in that room, watching the people who tried to break her realize they never stood a chance. Big Mama always said, "Baby girl, money doesn't buy happiness, but it sure does show you who people really are. Let them show you first, then decide if they deserve the truth." I lived by that. At 3 in the morning, walking through Atlanta General with my scrubs smelling like someone else's emergencies, I was just Naomi Carter, 28, nursing student, 3rd year. That's what my badge said, and that's all anyone saw. I turned the corner past the East Corridor, the Carter Wing, brass letters on marble, honoring the family whose pharmaceutical empire built this section of the hospital. My family. Nobody ever connected the name on my badge to the name on the wall. I liked it that way. My old Honda sat under a flickering light between 2 attendings' German sedans. Somewhere across town, a Bentley I never drove collected dust. My apartment was 600 square feet of quiet. I owned the building, but the tenants didn't know that. My phone buzzed as I slid behind the wheel. Uncle Marcus. Board meeting Tuesday. Kang contract renewal. You should be there. I typed back with one thumb. Nursing school. Handle it. The Kang contract. 60% of their hospital group's medication supply ran through Carter Pharmaceuticals. My company, my decision. But tonight, I was just a tired nursing student driving home in a car with 200,000 miles on it. And that was enough. I almost made it to my apartment. The call came at 1:53. Mass casualty. Multi-vehicle pileup on the interstate. All hands to the trauma bay. I turned the Honda around. The emergency department was controlled chaos. Gurneys lining the hallway. Monitors screaming. And at the center of it, commanding the room like he owned it, was a surgeon I'd only seen from a distance. Dr. Seojin Kang, chief resident, trauma, cold, precise, untouchable. I was supposed to observe. 3rd-year nursing students don't touch patients during a mass casualty. Then the patient on table 3 coded. His hands were full. He called for someone to apply pressure. I stepped in. My hands found the wound before my brain finished deciding. I called out vitals, anticipated the clamp he'd need before he asked. We worked in a rhythm that felt like we'd done this 100 times. The patient stabilized. He finally looked at me, dark eyes, sharp. Something underneath the cold, like he was solving a problem he hadn't expected. You're a student? Nursing student. 3rd year. You handled that like 10 years of experience. My grandmother says I was born bossy. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. From Dr. Kang, that was practically a standing ovation. What's your name? Naomi. Naomi Carter. He didn't flinch. Didn't glance toward the corridor where the Carter Wing letters gleamed. He had no idea who I was. And I had no idea that Kang wasn't just his name. It was the name on the contract Uncle Marcus wanted me to sign. Maybe I like being underestimated? Something shifted behind those dark eyes. A crack in the ice. I'll remember you, he said. He walked back into the chaos. I watched him go. He didn't know I was a Carter. I didn't know he was a Kang. But something just started. 3 weeks changed everything and nothing. Seojin found me during shifts. Coffee runs that turned into conversations in the break room. He'd quiz me on surgical procedures, then look almost annoyed when I got them right. You should be in medical school, he kept saying, like a record stuck on the one groove I couldn't explain. I kept smiling, kept deflecting, kept driving my old Honda home to the building I owned, while a man who didn't know my last name was worth more than his monthly salary tried to take care of me. Then he invited me to Sunday dinner at his parents' estate. I should have known. The Kang estate sat behind iron gates in Buckhead, the kind of house that whispered old money in a language most people couldn't read. I could read it fine. Big Mama's house in Savannah was bigger. Seojin's hand found the small of my back as we walked in. Warm, steady. I held on to that feeling because it was the last warm thing I'd feel for the next 2 hours. Mrs. Eunice Kang stood in the foyer. Silk blouse, pearl earrings, eyes that swept over me like a barcode scanner pricing discount merchandise. Get me some water. She said it without looking at my face. Just a flick of her wrist toward the kitchen, the way you'd gesture at someone whose name you'd never bother learning. Seojin's jaw tightened. Mother, this is Naomi. She's with me. The pause lasted 3 seconds. It felt like 30. Oh, her smile didn't reach her eyes. You're with my son. How interesting. She didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge the mistake, just turned and led us to the dining room, where Dr. Richard Kang sat at the head of the table reading something on his tablet. He looked up, looked at me, looked at his wife, said nothing. That silence told me everything. The table seated 12, and Sunja, Seojin's great-aunt, sat at the far end with posture that could cut glass. She looked at me once, then turned to Mrs. Kang and spoke in Korean. "Is this his charity project? She smells like the hospital," Mrs. Kang responded, without missing a beat. "At least it's not permanent. He'll get bored." I reached for my water glass, sipped, let the Korean wash over me like I couldn't understand every single word. Big Mama made sure I spoke 3 languages by 15. Korean was the third. Grace Kang, married to Seojin's cousin, leaned across the table with a smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Sweetie, that's a lovely dress. Target?" "Thank you, Grace." I smoothed the fabric. $4,000 of custom silk she'd mistaken for clearance rack. "You're so sweet to notice," Aunt Sunja muttered into her tea. "In my day, we married our own kind. This is what happens when children forget tradition." Mrs. Kang pressed a hand to her chest. A brief wince, barely visible, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't trained to watch bodies for a living. I noticed the slight tremor in her fingers, the way she shifted her weight like something ached beneath the composure. A heart condition, chronic, from the look of it. The shortness of breath she'd been hiding behind controlled sips of wine. The slight discoloration at her nail beds. I filed it away the way I filed everything. Quietly and completely. My medical training didn't stop being my medical training just because I was sitting at a dinner table, pretending I didn't have it. The dress she mocked? Custom made. $4,000. The shoes under the table? $800. The watch I'd left at home because she'd recognized the brand? Worth more than her car. But I said nothing. Big Mama didn't raise me to show my hand before the river card. Seojin drove me home in silence. At my door, he said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "My family. They're your family. That doesn't make it okay." I touched his arm. "I know who I'm sitting across the table from, Seojin, and I'm still here." He looked at me the way he had that first night in the trauma bay, like I was a problem he couldn't solve, like he wanted to keep trying. I didn't know then how much that would cost us both. 2 weeks later, I found him in the hospital chapel at 3 in the morning. He was sitting in the front pew, lights off, just the glow of electric candles lining the altar. His surgical cap was still on, which meant he'd come straight from the operating room. His hands were perfectly still in his lap, and I knew before I sat down that he'd lost someone, a child. I'd heard the code called overhead, heard the silence that followed. I didn't say I'm sorry, didn't offer some hallmark platitude about better places or God's plans. I just sat beside him in the dark, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. 20 minutes of silence. The chapel hummed with the kind of quiet that only exists at 3 in the morning in a building full of people fighting to stay alive. He breathed. I breathed. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped its steady rhythm. In here, time moved differently, slower, kinder. I didn't touch him, didn't put my hand on his shoulder the way people do when they don't know what else to offer. I just stayed, present, bearing witness to something that didn't belong to me, but that I could help carry just by being there. His breathing changed at some point. The rigid control in his shoulders loosened, just barely, like a fist unclenching one finger at a time. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head down. Finally, without turning his head, he spoke. "You didn't say anything stupid. Grief doesn't need words. It needs witness." He lifted his head, looked at me then, really looked. Not the calculating assessment from the trauma bay, not the careful interest from coffee runs. Something cracked behind those dark eyes, something he'd been holding together with precision and control and cold professionalism for God knows how long. I saw the man underneath the surgeon, the one who carried every lost patient home with him, the one nobody ever sat with in the dark. "Stay," he said. So I stayed, until the electric candles flickered and the first light crept through the chapel windows, until his breathing was steady and his hands had stopped gripping his knees, until he stood, looked at me one more time with those cracked open eyes, and walked back into the hospital to save the next one. That was the night everything shifted. After that night, he stopped pretending he wasn't looking for me. He'd appear at the nurse's station during my clinical rotations. Coffee in hand, always 2 cups. He started teaching me suture techniques off the record in an empty exam room, his fingers adjusting mine on the needle driver, and I tried not to notice how my breath caught every time his hand steadied mine. "Everyone tiptoes around Dr. Kang," I said one afternoon, tying off a suture on a practice pad. "Should you?" "I don't tiptoe for anyone." That almost smile again, wider this time, almost real. "No," he said, "you don't." It was during one of those afternoons that I heard it. 2 attending physicians walking past the exam room door, their voices carrying through the gap. The Foster case got reassigned. Nobody at Hopkins can touch Dr. I. Foster's success rate. Isn't she supposed to be finishing some advanced degree? Nobody's seen her practice in over a year. Dr. I. Foster. I kept my eyes on the suture, kept my hand steady. Seojin didn't notice the way my fingers paused for half a second on the needle. Imani, my middle name, the surgical license I'd earned before I ever set foot in nursing school. A life I kept locked in a drawer with a white coat, and a past I wasn't ready to explain. I pulled the suture through cleanly. Some secrets need more time. The second family dinner was worse. Seo-jin had been seeking me out openly at the hospital. People noticed. His family noticed more. Mrs. Kang's dining room felt smaller this time, the air thicker, and Soonja sat in her usual seat, and Grace had brought her phone to the table like a weapon. The Korean started before the appetizers. "Look at her hands," Mrs. Kang said to her husband, not bothering to lower her voice. "Rough, like a laborer. This is what our son brings home." Dr. Kang glanced at me, looked away, said nothing. Aunt Soonja set down her chopsticks with the precision of someone about to deliver a verdict. "My grandson, you know, he received the Carter Scholarship for his medical studies. Very prestigious, very selective. He's doing important work." She looked at me. "Perhaps you've heard of it." I had heard of it. The Carter Family Scholarship, named after my great-grandfather, funded by the foundation my family built. Aunt Soonja's grandson was studying medicine on my family's money, and she was using it to measure her worth against mine. I smiled. "That's a wonderful achievement. Your family must be very proud." Mrs. Kang switched to English, her eyes fixed on me. "My son has always had a generous heart. He loves helping those less fortunate." Seo-jin's hand found mine under the table, squeezed. He didn't speak Korean to me. He didn't translate what they'd said, but his grip told me he knew exactly what was happening. If they only knew, if any of them knew. But Big Mama's voice held steady in my chest. "Let them show you, then decide if they deserve the truth." They weren't done showing me yet. Grace struck next. Quietly, the way snakes do, a post appeared on a Korean medical community forum 3 days after that second dinner. "Just saw a Kang heir with a nursing student. How charitable." No names, but enough details that anyone connected to Atlanta General could figure it out. Grace's fingerprints were all over it. She expected mockery. She got a war. Within hours, the nursing community found the post. Screenshots flooded in from every direction. Naomi Carter stayed with my grandmother all night when no one else would. She tutors first-year students for free every Saturday. She's the first person I'd want by my bedside. "This is classist garbage, and whoever posted it should be ashamed." The comments didn't stop. Grace deleted the post by morning. But the internet has a long memory, and screenshots are forever. The testimonials kept circulating. Nursing students, attending physicians, patients' families, all of them, defending a woman Grace had tried to make small. Grace thought she could reduce me to a punchline, but the nursing community valued what I'd given them at something no amount of money could touch, and Grace learned that lesson the hard way. I said nothing, didn't share a single screenshot, didn't mention it to anyone at the hospital. Big Mama always said the best revenge is a life well lived, and the second best is silence that lets your enemies hear their own foolishness echo. At the next family gathering, Grace could barely meet my eyes. She busied herself with her phone, rearranging place cards nobody asked her to touch. Her hands shook slightly when she set mine down at the far end of the table, like even that small act of pettiness had lost its satisfaction. Seo-jin noticed. "What happened with Grace?" "Nothing. I think she's just having a hard week." He studied me. He knew there was more, but something in the way I let it go, the way I chose Grace over revenge, I saw it land behind his eyes. Something shifted, something settled. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment he started falling for real. After Grace's humiliation, Seo-jin stopped being careful, and I stopped pretending that scared me. He walked with me through hospital corridors without checking who was watching. He brought me lunch on days I forgot to eat, always something warm, always at the exact moment I needed it most. He defended me in small ways that mattered more than grand declarations. When a colleague made a comment about the Kang heir slumming it, Seo-jin looked at him with those cold surgeon's eyes and said, "She's the most capable person in this hospital. Choose your next words carefully." The colleague didn't have any next words. One night after a double shift, leaning against the vending machine in the basement break room, he told me about his ex-fiancée who left him for his cousin 3 years ago. The betrayal that turned Dr. Kang into a fortress. I told him about the ex who only wanted what I had, not who I was. We didn't name the specifics. We didn't need to. 2 people who'd been burned recognizing the scars on each other. "Why do you stay?" he asked me one evening, leaning against the nurse's station counter like he'd been waiting for me to finish charting. "At the hospital? With me. After everything my family. Because you're not your family, Seo-jin. Sometimes I'm not sure about that. I am." He looked at me the way he looked at a surgical field with total focus, reading every detail, measuring every risk. Then he said, "There's a complex case tomorrow. Vascular repair. I got you cleared to assist." I raised an eyebrow. "Cleared how?" I told the attending you're the best student I've ever worked with. He agreed. "You don't say things like that." "I know." That almost smile. Full this time. The real thing. That's how you know I mean it. The surgery took 4 hours. It was a 67-year-old man with an abdominal aortic aneurysm. Textbook case in theory. A nightmare in practice. The kind of procedure where one wrong clamp placement means a body bag instead of a recovery room. Seo-jin led. I assisted. And somewhere between the 3rd hour and the 4th, with my hands steady and his commands clean and the patient's vitals holding, I forgot to pretend I was just a nursing student. I anticipated his moves the way I had that first night in the trauma bay. Clamp before he called for it. Suction without being asked. reading the field like I'd been trained to, because I had been. Years of surgical residency don't disappear just because you trade your white coat for scrubs. He glanced at me over his surgical mask, just once. But his eyes said everything. He saw it. The thing I'd been hiding. He didn't have the words for what he'd just witnessed, but he knew what he saw wasn't a nursing student assisting. It was a surgeon operating. The patient made it. We walked out of the operating room at 9:47 in the evening, both of us running on adrenaline and something deeper, the kind of bond that forms when two people hold a life between them and refuse to let go. The hallway felt too bright, too loud, too full of people who hadn't just spent 4 hours in that sacred space between living and dying. Rooftop, he said. Rooftop. The hospital rooftop was technically off limits after 8, but Seojin had a key, and tonight, rules felt like suggestions written for people who hadn't earned the exception. Atlanta spread below us, city lights blurring into the dark. The air was cool and tasted like freedom after the sterile chill of the operating room. We stood at the railing, close, not touching, but close enough that I felt the heat coming off his arm next to mine. "You should be a surgeon," he said. "You keep saying that, because it's true. What you did in there, that wasn't assisting. That was operating." I watched the city lights. Maybe I don't want to operate. Maybe I want to be exactly where I am. Why? Because up there, in the OR, you're untouchable. Down here, with patients, with people, you're human. I like the human part. He turned to face me. The city lights caught the edges of his jaw, the line of his throat, the way his eyes had gone soft in a way I'd never seen from Dr. Kang. "My family hates you," he said. "I know. They'll never stop. I know that too. Why do you stay?" The question hung between us. Below, an ambulance siren wound through the streets. Up here, the world was just us. "Because you're worth it," I said, "and I think you need someone who sees you. Not the Kang name, not the surgeon, just you." His hand moved, found mine on the railing. His fingers laced through mine, and the warmth of it spread up my arm and settled somewhere I'd been keeping locked for a very long time. "Stay," he said. Same word as the chapel, different meaning entirely. The space between us shrank. I could see the question forming in his eyes, could feel the pull, magnetic, undeniable, the kind of gravity that doesn't ask permission. His gaze dropped to my lips, mine dropped to his. The city hummed below us, and for one perfect, suspended moment, the rest of the world didn't exist. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Not with his family's words still ringing in my ears and secrets still locked in my chest. I squeezed his hand instead, held it tight, let the moment breathe without breaking it. "Soon," I whispered. He exhaled, nodded, and we stood there on that rooftop, hands intertwined, watching Atlanta breathe below us, building towards something neither of us could stop. They had no idea who they were trying to destroy. None of them. Not Mrs. Kang with her Korean insults, not Grace with her gossip, not Aunt Sunja with her traditions, but they were about to find out. It happened 3 nights later. Same rooftop, same city lights, different everything. We'd lost a patient in the ER that afternoon, a teenager, 17, motorcycle accident. Seojin had fought for 2 hours. I'd been right beside him, handing instruments before he asked, reading the monitors like a second pulse. When the flatline held and the room went still, he didn't say a word, just stripped his gloves and walked out. I found him on the rooftop at 10:14 that night, sitting on the concrete ledge with his surgical cap still on, staring at nothing. I sat beside him, close, our shoulders touching this time. "You should be a surgeon," he said, voice raw. "You keep saying that, because up there, in the OR, you're untouchable. Down here," he turned to look at me, "down here you're human, and I think that's what terrifies me." "What does?" "That you make me human too." The city hummed below. I could feel his breath, warm against my temple. The space between us wasn't a question anymore. It was an answer. He kissed me, soft, tentative, like he was asking permission with his lips instead of his words. My hand found the back of his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that tasted like coffee and adrenaline, and 3 weeks of waiting. His hand cupped my jaw, gentle, like I was something precious and breakable, except I wasn't breakable. I was the strongest thing he'd ever held. He just didn't know it yet. 1 kiss. That's all it took. When we pulled apart, the city was still there. The lights, the sirens, the hum of 10 million lives happening below us. But everything between us had rearranged. The line we'd been circling for weeks was behind us now. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I could feel his pulse through his fingertips. Fast, matching mine. "Soon enough for you?" I whispered. He laughed. A real one. The kind that started in his chest and broke open something he'd been holding shut for years. The sound settled into my bones like a key turning in a lock I'd forgotten was there. "Worth the wait," he said. "Mrs. Kang found out within 48 hours. I don't know who told her. A nurse who saw us leaving the rooftop stairwell. A cousin who heard it from a colleague. It didn't matter. What mattered was the look on her face when she cornered me in the hospital parking garage. Alone, at the end of my shift. She was holding a manila envelope. "I'll be direct," she said. No smile this time, no pretense. "This is $200,000. Cash. Take it. Focus on your education. Build a life." She paused, and the pause was a weapon. "With your own kind." I looked at the envelope. Thick, heavy, the kind of money that changes most people's lives. I took it, didn't open it. "Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Kang." I walked to my Honda, steady, unhurried, didn't look back, put the envelope on the passenger seat like it was junk mail, and drove home to the building I owned. $200,000. She thought that was life-changing money. My checking account held $47 million. Carter Pharmaceuticals, the company that kept her husband's hospital stocked with every critical medication they dispensed, was worth $47 billion, and it was mine, all of it. But I took her envelope, let her think she'd won. Big Mama always said, "Let the pot boil. You'll know when it's time to lift the lid." It wasn't time yet. The bribe didn't work. So Mrs. Kang pulled out her backup plan. Dr. Yuna Park arrived at the next family dinner like she'd been gift-wrapped. Cardiology fellow, Korean, good family, beautiful in the way that photographs love and mothers-in-law worship. Mrs. Kang seated her directly across from Seo-jin. I was placed at the end of the table next to Grace, who still couldn't meet my eyes. Yuna was polished, charming. She touched Seo-jin's arm when she laughed, mentioned conferences they'd attended, hospitals where their paths had crossed. Then she leaned in, just loud enough for me to hear. "Seo-jin, remember that conference in Seoul, when your flight was cancelled and we shared that hotel suite?" She let the implication hang like smoke. I kept my face still, sipped my water, filed it away. Later in his car, I asked, "Did you?" "No." "She's lying. We never." "I believe you." He stared at me, just like that. "You've never lied to me. Why would you start now?" He pulled me close across the center console, his forehead against mine. "What did I do to deserve you?" I didn't answer that. Some questions are better left to God and Big Mama. 2 weeks later, the hospital charity gala. Yuna made her move, full charm offensive, hand on his arm, a whispered invitation only he was supposed to hear. He stepped back, and he didn't lower his voice. "I need to be clear." The room around us quieted, heads turned. "I was never waiting for you. I never wanted you. I found someone worth waiting for. Please stop embarrassing yourself." The color drained from Yuna's face like someone had pulled a plug. Every eye in that room witnessed it. The carefully constructed fantasy that Mrs. Kang had been building, the perfect Korean match, the backup plan, all of it crumbled in 5 seconds of public silence. Yuna didn't say another word. She transferred to a hospital in Chicago within the month. Gone. I should have felt relief. Instead, the attacks got worse. Dr. Richard Kang, who'd spent months as a silent statue at the head of his dinner table, finally spoke. Not to me, to Seo-jin, at the hospital, in front of colleagues. "Your distraction is affecting your performance. Fix it, or I'll fix it for you." The threat wasn't subtle. Seo-jin's father sat on the hospital board. One recommendation and my clinical rotations could vanish. My nursing career, the one they thought was all I had, could be over before it started. That week was the worst. Mrs. Kang called the nursing board, concerned about a student's unprofessional relationships. Grace started a new whisper campaign, quieter this time, more strategic. And Soonja told Seo-jin his grandfather would be ashamed. By Friday, Seo-jin looked like he hadn't slept in days. I found him at his apartment, still in his scrubs, sitting on the kitchen floor with his back against the cabinet. I sat beside him, same way I had in the chapel, same silence, same presence. "Why are you still here?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "My family is trying to destroy you. Let them try. They have money, power, connections. So do I." He didn't understand what I meant. He thought I was talking about inner strength, resilience, the things you say when you can't say the real thing. He had no idea. "Naomi," he took my hands, both of them. His thumbs traced circles on my knuckles, and I could feel the tremor in his fingers from exhaustion and something deeper. "Whatever happens, whatever they do, I love you. I love you more than I've ever loved anything. And I'm scared because I don't know how to protect you from them." My throat tightened. I cupped his face, felt the stubble, the warmth, the weight of everything he was carrying. "You don't have to protect me. Just love me. That's enough." "I do. I love you. I love you too." No kiss. Just his forehead against mine, breathing the same air, carrying the same weight. His eyes closed. Mine stayed open, memorizing him. The dark circles, the clenched jaw finally unclenching. The way his shoulders dropped when he said the words, like he'd been holding them up with everything he had, and could finally let go. We sat on that kitchen floor until the city went quiet outside his window. 2 people choosing each other when everything else was trying to tear them apart. Big Mama once told me that real love isn't the fireworks. It's what stays when the smoke clears. This was that. But Mrs. Kang wasn't finished. 3 days later, she found me at the hospital, This time her voice was ice, stripped of any pretense of civility. I will destroy your nursing career before it begins. Every clinical rotation, every recommendation letter, every door you need opened, I will close. You have no idea what this family can do. I looked at her. This woman who thought $200,000 was a fortune, who thought my nursing badge was the ceiling of my world, who had no idea that the medications keeping her own heart condition in check ran through a supply chain I controlled with a single phone call. I hear you, Mrs. Kang. That was all I gave her. She wanted fear. She got nothing. I walked away, steady, measured, Big Mama's voice in my head clear as Sunday morning. Let the pot boil, baby girl. It's almost time. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but Seojin's father had left the study door open, and voices carry in houses built to impress. Choose, Mrs. Kang's voice, stripped of everything but iron. This girl, or your family, Dr. Kang spoke next. Your inheritance, your position, your name. You have 48 hours. Seojin's voice came through the door raw. You're asking me to choose between the woman I love and my own blood. We're telling you, his mother said. There is no choice. I left before he could find me there, drove home, made the decision for him. He came that night. I opened the door and saw the war in his face. I won't be the reason you lose everything, I said. Naomi, don't. Your family needs you. I'll be fine. I don't want them. I want you, and I want you to have a family. My voice cracked. Just once. Don't follow me, please. I closed the door, pressed my back against it, listened to him stand there for a long time before his footsteps moved away. Then I called Big Mama. The tears came before I finished hello. The ugly kind that don't care about dignity or billion-dollar net worth. Baby girl, steady as Georgia Clay. Tell me. I told her everything. The ultimatum, the door, his footsteps leaving, silence. Then, Naomi Lucille Carter, when are you going to show that boy who you are? Big Mama, that boy looked at you like you hung the moon when he thought you couldn't pay rent. What makes you think knowing the truth would change that? Cousin Denise, in the background. Girl, you're letting them win? Big Mama, quieter now. Your heart already chose. Now the rest of you needs to catch up. I sat in the dark after we hung up, thinking about pots boiling over, about a woman who thought $200,000 could buy me. Then my phone rang. The hospital. Dr. Foster. Emergency consult. Mrs. Eunice Kang. Acute decompensated heart failure. She's crashing. You're the only one cleared for this procedure. The woman who called me the help, who offered me cash to disappear, who told her son to erase me from his life, dying, and I was the only person on earth who could save her. Prep the OR. I'm on my way. They knew me here as Dr. Imani Foster, emergency specialist. Nobody connected the surgeon in the white coat to the nursing student in scrubs. Mrs. Kang was already under when I entered the operating room. She would never know whose hands held her heart, whose steady fingers repaired the valve that stress and hatred had weakened to the point of failure. I took an oath, do no harm, even to people who harm me. 3 hours. My hands never shook. When her vitals steadied and the team exhaled, I changed back into my scrubs and disappeared into the night shift like a ghost. 3 days later, emergency board meeting. Kang Medical Group's supply chain for critical medications had stalled. Every hospital in their network bleeding inventory. Dr. Richard Kang had demanded to speak with Carter Pharmaceuticals directly. The boardroom was full. Executives, lawyers, SEO Jin near the end of the table, 2 weeks of missing me carved into his face. Mrs. Kang on video from her hospital bed, pale, recovering, alive because of a surgeon she'd never thanked. The doors opened. The Carter Pharmaceuticals representative is here. I walked in, power suit, my grandmother's diamonds, every inch of me exactly who I'd been hiding. The room went silent. Good morning. I'm Naomi Carter, sole heir to Carter Pharmaceuticals. I believe you wanted to discuss your contract renewal. Dr. Richard Kang's face changed first. I watched the arithmetic happen behind his eyes. Carter, the nursing student, 60% of their medications. The woman his wife tried to buy off. The $200,000 offer was memorable. I looked at the video screen where Mrs. Kang's mouth had fallen open. I also saved someone's life this week. Your wife, Dr. Kang. I turned to the father. You're welcome. Grace went white in the corner. The charity gala, the Carter Foundation. Every dollar she'd spent years begging for came from my family. Aunt Sunja's hands trembled. Her grandson's scholarship, Carter Family Scholarship. She'd been insulting the people paying for his future. On the screen, Mrs. Kang shattered. Not anger, understanding. The nursing student she'd tried to destroy had saved her life, controlled her hospitals, funded her family's achievements. Every insult, every Korean whisper, every envelope of cash played across her face in real time. She couldn't speak. For the first time since I'd known her, Mrs. Eunice Kang had nothing to say. I didn't gloat, didn't need to. I stood in that boardroom the way Big Mama taught me. tall, quiet, worth more than everyone in the room combined. Then Seojin stood. He reached for the Kang Medical Group ID badge clipped to his jacket, unclipped it, held it for a moment, this small plastic rectangle that represented his name, his inheritance, everything. He slid it across the table toward his father. I built my career with my own hands. Every surgery, every save, mine. His voice was steady. I'll build my life the same way. With her. He walked to my side, took my hand. The boardroom held its breath. I loved you when I thought you couldn't pay rent. His thumb traced my knuckles the way it had on that kitchen floor. This doesn't change anything, except now I understand why you didn't tell me. Why? My voice barely a whisper. Because you wanted someone to love you. Not your name, not your money, just you. And I do. I did. I always will. I squeezed his hand. Didn't cry. Wouldn't give them that. But my heart was full. Standing in that boardroom with his hand in mine, facing the family that tried to break us, I understood what Big Mama meant all along. Money shows you who people are. But love, the real kind, the kind that chooses you when you have nothing, that's the only currency that matters. He found me on the rooftop, our rooftop, where he'd told me I should be a surgeon, where I'd whispered soon with his hand in mine, where he'd kissed me for the first time while Atlanta hummed below us like it knew. The secrets were gone, the hiding was over, just two people standing where it all started, finally seeing each other with nothing in between. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because when you worried about my rent, when you cooked me dinner, when you wanted to take care of me, that was the first time anyone saw me. Not my money, not my name, not Carter Pharmaceuticals, just me. He was quiet for a long time, the kind of quiet I'd learned to trust from him. I see you, Naomi. His voice was steady and certain. I always did. He kissed my forehead, held me against the railing with his arms around me, and his heartbeat against my ear, and the whole city stretched out below like a promise. What now? I whispered. Now we build something real. 2 days later, I slid the contract across the boardroom table. Carter Pharmaceuticals would continue supplying Kang Medical Group under new terms, fair ones, and Seojin would stay in surgery. His choice, his career, not theirs. His father signed without hesitation. 1 year later, Seojin was the top trauma surgeon in the state. I finished nursing school, took my seat on the Carter Pharmaceuticals board, and still volunteered at Atlanta General 1 night a week. Some habits are worth keeping. We had 2 weddings because we came from 2 worlds, and both of them deserved a celebration. The Korean ceremony was first. Hanbok silk in colors I'd only seen in my dreams. The tea ceremony. My hands steady as I poured. Mrs. Kang cried through the entire thing, not the controlled tears she usually allowed herself. The real kind. The kind that come from somewhere deep enough to change you. She placed her own mother's hairpin in my hair. Her hands trembled. In Korean tradition, there is no higher honor a mother-in-law can offer. We both understood the weight of it. The southern celebration was 2 weeks later. Big Mama's backyard in Savannah. String lights in the magnolia trees. Biscuits and barbecue and too much love to fit in 1 yard. Big Mama met Mrs. Kang by the punch bowl. 2 grandmothers who'd raised warriors, sizing each other up. Your grandson is lucky, Big Mama said. So is your granddaughter, Mrs. Kang replied. Both of them cried. Denise handed them napkins and said, Lord, not again. And everyone laughed. Seojin pulled me close under the string lights, slow dancing to a song I'd remember forever. No regrets? I asked. Marrying you? Never. 1 year became 3. Then a Tuesday evening at the Kang estate, where everything had once gone wrong and was now slowly, stubbornly going right. Family dinner, but different. I sat at the head of the table, next to Seojin. Not at the end, never again at the end. Big Mama was in the kitchen teaching Mrs. Kang how to make collard greens. Denise and Grace were arguing about something on Instagram. Almost friends. Almost. Aunt Sunja leaned across the table with her phone. Naomi, you will meet my grandson's friend at Christmas. Very handsome. Single. I'm very married, Aunt Sunja. For your cousins? I have ideas. Mrs. Kang came from the kitchen carrying a cup of tea. She set it in front of me, not the way she'd once demanded water from a woman she mistook for staff. Gently, with both hands. The way you serve someone you are grateful to know. Thank you, she said. For my son, for my life, for your mercy. I took her hand, held it. Thank you for raising a man worth loving. Seojin squeezed my other hand under the table. Big Mama's voice drifted from the kitchen, warm as Savannah in August, steady as the woman who taught me everything that mattered. Money shows you who people are, but mercy, that shows who you are. I smiled. I'd earned this, all of it.